Happy Thanksgiving Day. I think those words together, Thanksgiving, mean gratitude. All of us have a little gratitude in our hearts today for something. Let's see if we can find some. We have some people on tonight, at least one, I think, who might have some. Sweet and sour program. You guess which one it would be. And Allie Pete Wilbur is going to join us in just a moment right here on the Thanksgiving Eve edition of the Buddy Martin Show. Stay tuned. Coming up right now, right here on this station after this opening.
For Buddy Martin, call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye!
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Hello, welcome to the program. It's the Buddy Martin Show. It's the Allie Pete Wilbur and David Moulton Sweet and Sour program. Always a great time. And may have a visitor or two pop in today. And it's a good day to say you're grateful. And I have a lot of gratitude. I was just doing a piece for our site coming up on Thanksgiving, evaluating year to year Thanksgiving, what kind of a year it's been for you. It's been a complicated year for me, full of sadness and joy, and failure and success, love and not so much love. It's been interesting and sometimes difficult. Isn't that what life is supposed to be? Let's ask this lady. She would know. Allie Pete Wilbur. What does it say? Tall for what? Fall for what?
It says.
Oh, I love that shirt. Now, listen, my dog would have to have that shirt. I mean, that's great. Love that shirt.
I figured it's one of the last days I can wear it before we Christmas.
Yeah, that's great. I love that shirt. Well, it fits you well, too, and your personality. So I'm just so proud of you, Allie. I can't tell you. I mean, you're almost like my daughter. You know, I'm just so happy and proud. Your work's been so stellar, successful, and you do it so well. And you're smart. I told somebody, they say, yeah, and she can talk football. Oh, yeah, she can talk ball with you, too. Now, don't think she's just a pretty face because she knows how to do that, has known it for a long time. So always just get a great deal of pleasure out of having you on the show and watching your show. And tell folks about your podcast and everything again so they'll know that most of them here on my show watch it. So tell them about how you got started, what you're doing, where you're going with it, and who all you've had on recently.
Well, first of all, it's so cool for me to get to do this with you because you are Gator athletics to me and University of Florida journalism, so to speak. And so it's super cool, somebody that I grew up reading to get to do this with. It's a treat for me, for sure. And I started this in March. A friend of mine that I used to do a podcast with was like, there's an opening for a Gator YouTube channel, you should be doing this. And so we kind of took a risk and did it, and it's going well. It's grown faster than we kind of thought it would. I've gotten to have some awesome guests. Actually, last week you helped arrange this for me. Urban Meyer came on, which was awesome. There is actually a third part to my interview with him that we're just kind of holding on to a little bit, but about Swamp Kings that we'll release. I've had Storing on a couple times. We've had Shane Matthews. We've had a bunch of the guys from Swamp Kings that play with my husband. We've had Brandon James. Lots of guys. We've had Tate Casey, Ben Troop, who's a good friend of your show. He has come on. Lots of old Gators, which has been really cool to get to walk down memory lane a little bit. But, I started when I was in high school. It used to be Time Warner, and then became Bright House, and then became Spectrum. They had a high school show, and I was a junior in high school, and they were looking for high school kids to
Where were
host
you?
their.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Tampa Catholic.
Okay.
In Tampa. And so I was the first kid that ever auditioned for them. And it was supposed to be that you did it for a semester. And I did it for a semester of my junior year. And then they were like, you want to do it the second semester? And I did it my second semester of my junior year. And then they were like, you want to do it your senior year too? So I did it for 2 semesters then. And then when I went to the University of Florida, Sun Sports reached out and said, hey, we do an hour-long magazine show too, similar to what you were doing, but it covers the whole state. Are you interested in hosting that? So I hosted that while I was in school, which was super fun. And actually the person that had hosted it before me, who went on to bigger and better things, was James Bates, which was kind of neat. And, from there, I dabbled. CBS, Orlando's affiliate of CBS, asked me to do a Gator show for them. I did a drive time radio show for several years. And then I had kids and kind of, took a break for a while. And so this podcast is a little bit the dipping my toe back in the water, so to speak. But it's been super fun. It's been really neat.
You're doing more than dipping your toe. You're making a splash. I have had the good fortune to work with many bright, promising women and watch them grow. And, starting with really, Laura McKeeman Ruthers worked for us when she was in school, she and my son Brendan. And you could tell early on she was going to be a star. Yeah. And I told her the first week I met her, I'm not one to give out compliments or flatter people, especially women. I just think they ought to have to earn their way like everybody else. If you don't do that, you do them a great disservice because you haven't had it easy. And I said to her, I'm going to tell you, I'll make a prediction. I think you're going to be the next Erin Andrews. And look at her now. She's nipping at the heels of Erin Andrews right now.
Absolutely.
She didn't have children right away, so she had a little break. But I think the world of you, I think you're really good at what you do. I know you have other jobs to do and you can't devote yourself 100%, but boy, I just love your stuff. Love working with you. I'm so happy for you. And I think you're still going to go a ways here. Maybe you'll knock Erin Andrews off. Who knows? What the heck?
Well, I appreciate it for sure.
I think I'd like you to just give a word to the young women out there to encourage them to be bold and to not let the old boys shoot them down, and to tell them how you had to do it. You had to go through some crap too, and just encourage I'd say a 19-year-old girl in college wants to be the next Allie Peak Wilbur. What should she do?
Work hard, study the sport, learn the things, that you can, and keep grinding. Essentially, I was lucky in that I never really felt like there was a whole lot of men that were telling me no, but maybe that's because I'm really pushy. I don't know. So I think you do have to be pushy. You can't take no for an answer. You have to go after what it is that you want, but you have to know what you're talking about to be able to do that. And, I think the best thing that ever happened to me was that there was football on in our house 24/7. And my dad always available to answer questions for me about it. And so my love of the sport, but also my knowledge of the sport grew really organically. I never really had to study. I learned as I grew up in a household that it was something that, was important to my parents. It was something that we kind of all did together. And I hope that's something that I'm sharing with my daughters too. I watch them. Our seats are right behind the end zone, the north end zone. And when I watch them watch the game, they go down to the wall when the plays are right in the end zone, and I watch them watch it so intently, and it gives me goosebumps sometimes because they appreciate it. They're so into the game. They're so mad I'm not taking them to Florida State. It's a night game, and we're gonna go with friends instead. But like they are into it, and it so reminds me of myself as a 9-year-old kid because I organically loved it for as long as I can remember. I had every article ever written about the 96 national championship team taped to my wall. It was the wallpaper in my room, and I see that in my own kids, and it's so neat to watch.
Well, you were a fangirl, but now you're not a fangirl. That's the thing about it. What I like about you is you're able to separate the two. You're a huge fan, third generation Gator family. And you openly talk about the Gators, you criticize them. if they need the criticizing, and you obviously laud their success. I think, but you never lapse into being fangirl, which is good for you. I'm proud of you.
I think you got to look at things objectively. People don't want to hear what you have to say if you are just a fan, right? They want to hear objectively the good, the bad, the ugly. What are we looking at? What are the odds of, XYZ happening? And, unfortunately, we've had a couple of years where we haven't gotten to be all that excited about Florida football. We have had to be realists.
All right, and we'll get David on here in a minute, but we got sweet on, we'll get sour next. But where were the times when you felt like throwing the towel in, when you think this is not worth it? Or this is people beating me up, or I can't do this. Talk about the times when you almost stopped doing it.
Well, when I was doing drive time radio, and drive time in the morning is basically like 5 to 9 a.m. And so I was on starting at 5 a.m. in the morning, leading into Mike Bianchi, who was on after me. And so when you go on the air at 5 a.m., you wake up at 3 a.m. because you need to get there at least an hour before, if not longer. So you also, though, have to kind of be up late because you have to see what is happening in the games that are running late at night. So there would be nights that I wasn't going to bed until 12 or 1 because there was an NBA game on, or a, Monday night game that was running late or whatever, but I needed to know about it for the next day. So I had to stay up and watch it, but then I had to turn around and wake up in 2 hours or 3 hours. And, as you know, local sports journalism doesn't pay a whole lot. So that was a lot of work and effort. And I think it was worth it for sure. But I mean, that was hard. There's definitely days where I didn't want to get up and go in, but there's also not really somebody to fill in for you. Certainly not on the spot. That has to be something that's arranged well ahead of time. So I can't say that I loved every single morning of the wake up, but I definitely loved every single morning of the show.
Hard to find the payoff sometimes when you're not making much money and you're working hard, working long hours. You think nobody's listening to me. Everybody goes through that. So you got something going. And how long before you had kids? How many years?
I did it, I think 5 years before I had kids.
Okay. So you did the grinding.
Probably my proudest moment of my radio career is that originally I was in an ensemble show, a morning ensemble show, and the show got an offer to move to a different station. And it was a little bit more money, but it was less ears. It was a smaller station, and I didn't want to go because I felt like the exposure was worth more than the few additional dollars an hour. So I went to the head of, at the time it was Clear Channel, it's now become iHeart, the head of the Southeast of Clear Channel, and she's a woman, and I said, listen, our show is leaving. They're going to a different station. I don't want to go. And she's like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want my own morning show. I want to do this by myself.
Wow.
And she said, okay.
Wow.
And she gave me my own show, and it turned into the Peak Hour, which, and I was the first woman to do a solo sports radio show in the Southeast. Now I'm sure there's many that have done it since then, but
the sports babe, that one in Tampa, remember?
Mm-hmm. And this one was syndicated in like a whole bunch of markets, and it was really cool. But I think only because I stood up for myself did that opportunity, because they weren't going to find me and ask me to stay. I asked them, "Hey, can I do this?"
That's a cool story, and for young people trying to get into business, there's a dues to be paid, and Allie's paying hers and is paying all. So let's do this commercial real quick. I think Mr. I'm not going to call him Sour because it's Thanksgiving. Mr. David is standing by in orange and blue room, and we'll get to him. But first, let me tell you about Titan MRI. Titan MRI is worth the short drive to Gainesville. No insurance is no problem. You can pay cash or card with same-day scheduling available. Start feeling better today because Titan MRI is North Central Florida's premier independent MRI facility. Come see why hundreds of patients are visiting our Gainesville location from Ocala, Marion County, and the villages. That's TitanMRI.com. Well, here's one from sweet to sour. That's the last time I'm going to say it. Happy Thanksgiving to you, David. How you doing?
Good, and happy Thanksgiving to you, Allie, and all the best to your families.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
We're going to have a serious show today, okay?
Uh-oh.
We're going to get to some serious stuff. We're not going to mess around with small talk, all right? let's get right down to it right now. The best dish on Thanksgiving. What is it?
So is this a white meat versus dark meat show? I mean,
Could be anything you want it to be.
Allie, as a veteran of morning sports talk radio, okay, our poll question of the day today was best Thanksgiving side dish, but we only gave two choices. We only gave stuffing or mashed potatoes.
Oh, that's no choice. Come on.
Well, people were upset we didn't include mac and cheese or others, but I'm just saying, so, you know.
I do like all the sides better than I actually like the meat. I mean, I'll eat turkey, but it's not my favorite. But give me the mashed potatoes, sweet potato casserole, green bean casserole, all the things. Give me all the sides.
We nixed the green bean casserole at this year's Thanksgiving. Wow. We put it to a vote, and there's 14 people coming, and only 2 wanted the green bean casserole.
Well,
the
there you go.
The casserole is to make it with fresh green beans. You can't mess around with it with canned green beans.
Well, the subtitle of this is The Secrets of a Good Thanksgiving. So we're going to give a little bit of a seminar on some secrets here. And I'm going to tell you one right now, for all you folks not raised in the South, that people who have never eaten sweet potato pie don't understand. It is so good. It is every bit as good as pumpkin, if not better. My mother made many, many pies every year, but none better than her sweet potato pie. And every time a newcomer would say, "Oh, that's good pumpkin pie." It's not pumpkin, it's sweet potato. Allie, you've had it. What do you think?
Oh, I've had it. Sweet potato pie is great. I also give me all the pies. I'm
a pie person. I love pie. My kingdom for a pie. I love it.
100%. I'm actually going to teach my girls how to make apple pie tonight.
Apple pie. Okay.
Yes. I'm an apple pie guy. I must
apple
admit.
Pie guy. You sound like an apple pie guy, you know? You're apple pie. Now, there's some people from up in your part of the country where you grew up, David, who like mince meat pie. I mean, they do. They do. They eat it. I'm telling you, I've been up there. That's not pie. You know.
Wow. There were only 2 pies I experienced as a child. Apple and my mom's mom made lemon meringue.
Those meringue is good.
Until I went away to college, I swear, the only 2 pies I had experienced were apple and lemon meringue.
Allie, you never had pecan pie?
Oh, I've had pecan pie.
I know you have. Beautiful.
Wonderful.
Pecan pie is wonderful, yeah. And last night I asked Shane, he likes chocolate pie, he said. Chocolate pie, all right? Wow. And he says it pie, P-A-H, pie. That's how you say it down south. So yeah, I mean, cherry is great. You don't hear people talking about it a lot. My mom had a great cherry pie. It was beautiful. But I'm with you, Allie. I could have every pie except mincemeat.
Yeah, no mincemeat for me either.
No.
I must admit, I had never experienced anything on Thanksgiving except turkey. And then we did a couple of games the day after Thanksgiving for CBS. And the night before, we had turducken.
Yeah, that's the Madden dish.
And wow, is it good? Damn, is it good? Had it in Arkansas, had it in Louisiana.
Oh, I bet in Louisiana it's very good. Les
Miles showed up at our CBS Thanksgiving dinner, one year, because he heard turducken was being served. That's a true story.
A great story.
What's the most extravagant Thanksgiving dinner you've ever had?
I was last minute invited by Troy Aikman to come over his house for Thanksgiving dinner. He had it catered. It was Italian. I was like, oh, and they were the biggest meatballs I've ever seen.
Okay.
But he was the, gatekeeper. He would let you have one plate as much as you could put on it. And after that, he was kind of like, these meatballs are mine. And we're like, come on. He's like, no, you can have seconds. Just stay away from the meatballs. He loves his meatballs.
Wow. There's a line there someplace. Anyway, so Allie, what's the most extravagant Thanksgiving you've had?
I have never done Thanksgiving anywhere but my house or my parents' house or my grandparents' house. I mean, I'm not a restaurant holiday type of girl, and we never traveled on Thanksgiving. I'm the oldest of 7, so my mom always hosted. My dad's one of 6, and all of his siblings live in Tampa and have kids. So it's like 60 people at Thanksgiving. I think I have 40 coming tomorrow.
That's the biggest I've ever heard of. 60.
Think about 6 kids that all have kids. My family has 7. My mom's family always came too. They have 4 kids. It was always mass chaos, lots of food, lots of fun, nothing fancy. Football on TV.
Well, Allie and I had very similar childhoods because my mom's an only child and I'm an only child. So so here you are with between 40 and 60 people at Thanksgiving, and we oftentimes had between like 4 and 6.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's my grandmother. I have my grandmother's Thanksgiving china, but it only has 12 place settings. So I have had it for 15 years at this point, and I've never once gotten to use it because we have not come anywhere close to only having 12 people at Thanksgiving.
Do you have adult tables and kids tables?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
And isn't it great when you graduate? Isn't it when you graduate to the adult table, you're like, yes.
Married. I was married. I don't think I actually got to make the move till I had kids. It was very long in the making.
Grandpa then. So here's a quick extravagance thing. In TV, when you work in TV and travel, and I worked in NFL Today for 3 years, went to New York 22 weekends a year, working with Terry Bradshaw, who loves food. We always went to the Macy's Day Parade and whatever. But he didn't, but we did. And in 1 year, we said, let's have a big Thanksgiving, okay? We stayed at the Regal Royal downtown every weekend. And so Terry decided to order Thanksgiving for about 10 of us. Okay. We came back from the show. I kid you not. There was a veritable feast sitting there with 2 hams, 2 turkeys, 9 pies. I mean, you name it, it was all this food. And I'm telling you, we didn't even make a dent in it. We ate and ate and ate, and there was so much left over. And now we're thinking, what do we do with this food? It's unbelievable food left over. What can we do? We called downstairs. Can we give it out? No, you can't. Nobody wants to take it. Not allowed to give it away. So she'll have to take it out back and throw it away or something. Well, we can't do that. There's probably $900 worth of food there, sitting there. Yeah. I think we finally gave it out the back door to somebody to take. But I'm telling you, I've never seen so much food in one room in my life. Terry overindulged on that one. So, yeah. So when you're on the road, it's different for sure. All right, guys. I guess at some point we have to talk about football, but I'm in kind of a light mood right now, and I like talking about food and things. It's my favorite holiday, and here's why. Where else do you get all these things? Food, family, football, faith, all that wrapped into one. No presents necessary. You don't have to buy them, right? And you get to eat and go to sleep on the floor. Trip thing kicks in and you kick in and you just snore on the floor and you're watching the Cowboys and whatever. It's just a wonderful holiday. I can't think. I love Christmas, but man, give me Thanksgiving every time. What do you guys think?
The amount of peak men that will be asleep on my couch and floor tomorrow at about 5:15 is, I mean, there's no room for any women to sleep. There is literally peak men head to head all across the couch. It doesn't matter whose house we are. Low man on the totem pole is usually my 25-year-old brother on the floor. There's a family nap that takes place while the kitchen gets cleaned.
It's a ritual, David.
We played high school football. We played our biggest rival on Thanksgiving Day in the Northeast. And all the games took place at about 10 or 10:30 in the morning. And so... And sometimes your regular season, if you will, was over like 19 days earlier. I remember my senior year, we actually played a playoff game and then on a short week had to play our crosstown arch rival and then continue in the playoffs. So when I think of Thanksgiving, football is very much involved in the Northeast. The high school football season didn't end until Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have day games a lot up there too. So
regional finals in Florida Thanksgiving weekend. So there's a lot of good high school football that'll take place on Friday night. Actually, I'm going to go to Judge's regional final game on Friday. But I think there's definitely a tie here, although it's different. It's not your rivals, but there are still teams with a lot to play for, and they'll play on Friday.
Is there even a big high school rivalry on Thanksgiving? I mean, I think of Florida State because it's every year it's at this weekend, but is there one? I don't know of one.
There's not, and not in our state, because the games that are played this weekend will determine who goes to states. So And if a rivalry happens, it's because two teams that just have lined up multiple years in a row to play each other. But there's some intense high school football because winners all go to states.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, well, we got an unusual one Saturday. This never happened before. The starting quarterbacks for both teams hurt in the second half of the game before the week before, and both out. I never remember that happening in the area. And, of course, two really good players, and I feel equally bad for both of them. Let's start with Graham Mertz. Will he ever buy a drink in Gainesville again? I mean, what a performance he put on there, and capped off a remarkable year. The courage or insanity that he showed, especially on that linebacker sandwich where I guess he ran through four guys, and the way he played, I mean, that's inspirational. If you can't get inspired by that, forget about whether you win and lose the game, but a guy lays it out like Allie, how can you not love that, Allie?
I mean, I don't think there's a single play that more epitomizes who Graham Mertz is for Florida than that play that he got hurt on. And which, he got hurt, then he played the next play before I think adrenaline had kicked in, and then he realized his arm was just kind of hanging there. But the two guys that he ran directly through that hit shoulder to shoulder, both had to be helped off the field. Yeah. He is so tough. He's had to be tougher than I wish he had to be this season because offensive line play has not been great. But there is just not a player for the last several years that has laid it on the line in the way that Graham Mertz has. And I just think he's played this whole season like he has something to prove, which he did. Nobody but Billy Napier essentially believed in him. And obviously that was an incredible eval on Billy Napier's part because, he imagined where Florida would be had Graham Mertz not been the quarterback. But what a tough guy who clearly loves the logo on the front of the jersey.
What's Florida's passing game, I think, is top 5 in the country in completion percentage. And also it's 14 percentage point higher than what he did over 3 years at Wisconsin. So he, Napier, and his staff all deserve credit. And you're right, Allie. Graham Mertz is so far Billy Napier's crowning achievement, to be honest, in 2 years as Gator coach. That's, and that's for those that want to support Napier, it's like, listen, he can see talent. He can even see it when others, and goodness knows I was at the top of the list, denigrating it. And, unfortunately, he needs to find 2 dozen more.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the problem.
Mertz are the top because I don't know that he gets credit for the guys he brought over from Louisiana. I think he gets credit in the fact that they were able to play at an SEC level and they had been at Louisiana Lafayette. But I don't know that you get credit for convincing him to come here when you were already had that relationship, you and your coach, and you're giving him an opportunity to play SEC football. So that's an easy, conversation. But convincing some of these other guys out of the portal that this is the place for you.
Ricky Pearsall, for one, yeah.
Ricky Pearsall and Graham Mertz would be the two, I think, that he can hang his hat on. But the talent eval that went into Graham Mertz, everybody.
If there was any chance of losing Mertz, though, I actually think the injury will all but guarantee that he comes back. Okay, that, if you thought that he could potentially declare himself for the draft and impress people with workouts, and if he wasn't a second-day pick, he'd be an early third-day pick. I mean, look at Sam Howell, 5th-round pick who's starting in the NFL. Now I think he all but has to, if he wants to play on Sundays, he has to come back for another year, get healthy, show that he's healthy, continue being the leader that he is of the team, which obviously Florida desperately needs him to come back, groom the 5-star kid coming in. That's the only positive that you can take from this injury.
Yeah, best case scenario for Florida is Graham Mertz coming back, and him, Lagway has an incredible skill set and probably a better skill set for what Napier wants to do long term, but he needs to sit behind somebody, learn how to lead, which I think there's not anybody better for him to learn behind than Graham Mertz. But also, our schedule next season is brutal. The last thing Florida wants to do is throw a freshman out there with that schedule. But, after we saw how Max Brown competed on Saturday too, Florida's quarterback room is suddenly looking incredibly deep.
Let's talk about that because as much as I love Mertz, there are certain things that Brown does that
Yeah.
enhanced the offense more, and namely running the football. You saw how effective he was doing that. It makes the defensive end, the linebackers, be honest. You can't load it up, and I think he can. His running ability has been proven. He can actually move the football on his feet. I love the way he threw the football. He made that one bad mistake, turning the ball over. But that was it, 3rd and 4th and 5 pass he threw. Who was it to?
Will Jackson.
Jackson, yeah, across the middle, and perfect throw. I was really impressed, and I know my son Brendan, he likes him better than the Graham Mertz. I don't, but I think he is really an interesting guy. And how hard is it, David, for a guy to come off the bench cold with very little experience like that and step into the fray and have to make those first downs and take them down the field and then get behind by 9 and come back and take them to the lead?
Well, I think we all know that sometimes being a little naive can be good in a short moment. And, you just kind of come in and it's like, well, I'm going to do my thing. And when it works, it's awesome. And when you throw 2 picks, people go, well, wow, he wasn't ready. And he came in and did his thing and it worked. And so it was awesome. And it should have been, an inspiring, terrific win that everyone is still beaming about.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that it didn't end up being, because then this season would have had a nice, 2 nice moments to it. It would have had Tennessee. Some would argue the comeback against South Carolina, and then it would have had at Missouri, and
they're right there. They're right there. They don't know how to close games. They don't know how to win yet, but they are literally knocking at the door. And this honestly could be the week that they figure it out. The playing field has been incredibly leveled, because Florida State will be playing at Rodemaker instead. And so that, that's huge. But I think a couple of things. One, after watching Brown play, it makes me surprised that Billy Napier didn't have some sort of package for him throughout the season, because that would be a really nice change of pace, particularly in a game like Kentucky where we just can't get anything going. Let's try to bring in a spark. The other thing that was really interesting to me, that fumble happened because when he turned to Etienne, he put that football in Etienne's elbow. And what that tells me is that he hasn't practiced with Etienne. You're trying to put the ball in their mesh part, which is, they're basically around their belly button where they're most comfortable grabbing the football. And Mertz knows exactly where Etienne's mesh spot is because he's practiced with him 100,000 times. I would guess that Brown has not practiced with Etienne a whole lot. And that's part of the problem. And, textbook would tell you turn your entire body and place the football in his belly button. But in real life practice, you don't have as much time to actually do that as you think you do. But I think that maybe it's a sign that our 1s and 2s need to be mixed up a little bit and practice more with each other, because that's a mistake that is translating over from practice.
Good point. David should be really. And the former offensive coordinator went to the Eagles. He had the rule where he had the quarterbacks, every one of them took snaps for the 1s every single day. All of them did. Now I see why. There's a good example, David. Had he been working with the 1s some, she's right. He would have known. I've handed that off 100 times myself in high school as a quarterback. You know where to put that ball, right in the belly, where to ride it. And that elbow is always a factor. You're right. If he'd practiced that, he probably wouldn't have done it.
But that is stuff that is fairly common when we see the backup center or backup quarterback or what have you come in. There's usually, obviously a little bit of a disconnect. Sometimes the ball will always end up on the ground. You just hope you're able to fall on it. And that time, obviously, they couldn't. I still think we're focusing on the wrong side. Let's face it. If the Gator defense this season had performed to the level of the Gator offense,
I mean,
there'd be at least 2 more wins on the board.
Probably, maybe even more than that. I mean, if defense was just mildly serviceable,
right,
they get Arkansas and they get Missouri. In theory, they get Utah. I mean, Utah is there was some major mistakes that happened that I think are correctable.
Well, but I would argue with, they gave up 270 yards in that game, 70 or whatever on the first play. I actually thought, for whatever reason, the defense of September is not the defense of October and November. The defense of October and November has been terrible.
Yeah. But also some of that is opponent based, not necessarily
Yeah.
Utah. But the schedule got more difficult as
It
the
did.
season went on. And so I think that's part of it. But we're not it's weird because this team plays with heart and plays with fight, but they don't play with relentless effort. And it's hard to kind of fully explain the difference between that. But I think there is a difference. This team isn't quitting, but they still aren't finding that last gear on defense.
But I'll tell you what, though, the 4th and 17 play
what
is
about
really
that?
It's I don't know what you think, Allie, but it's difficult for me to comprehend. And I am not exaggerating when I say this. Obviously, no one talking right now is good enough to be on the field.
Right.
But let me tell you something. It's 4th and 17, and you're defending the sticks, and the receiver hooks up 2 yards short of the sticks and catches the ball. How is that receiver not being hit? It's one thing to give up the catch. How in the world is that receiver catching it, turning around, expecting to be hit, and going, oh, wow, I can kind of fall forward and still get the first down here? Where are the defensive backs in the middle of the field? That's not on a coordinator. I'm sorry, that's not.
I think, honestly, though, I think the problem's way before that. So when they line up at 4th and 17, which, reminder, we're coming out of a timeout, which means you have plenty of time to talk to your defense. Before the ball was snapped, Eric paused it, and he's like, they're going to throw it to a receiver right here. It's soft between the linebackers and the DBs. He's like, our linebackers are only lined up 5 yards off the ball. That's insane. They need to be lined up at 13 yards or 15 yards off the ball, because if they catch it short, it doesn't matter. And then he was saying, as a coach, he would put the DBs at 20 yards so that the play is in front of them, so that they have to step into it as opposed to turn around to make a play. So prior to that ball being snapped, he literally looked at it and told me exactly where it was going to go and why. And that tells me that is scheme. You know, what happens after that, a play not being made, I think does fall on the players, but they were not put in a position to succeed either. And they had the timeout, so they had the ability to do that.
There are those who say they should have been doubled. It should have been doubled.
Let me ask a question, though. I mean, does Florida need to make another change at DC?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Really?
Let's ask the question.
Let's do this objectively with how they've performed the last 2 months. Okay, everybody likes this DC. I do too. I think structurally they've been far better than they had been the last couple of years. But man, oh man, the way they've performed the last 2 months is bad.
Yeah.
I like Austin Armstrong, and I think he is going to be a good defensive coordinator. I just also don't really feel like Florida's an on-the-job training sort of job, which is exactly what we're doing. So if that's what we're going to do, then we really need some other coaching changes potentially. I think Florida's defensive line has been pitiful this year, but I also think a root of a lot of our problems is strength and conditioning. Our players look slow and they look weak. Like, think about that DB bouncing off the Missouri receiver. I mean, that's pathetic. And I think you put part of that on strength and conditioning. Part of that is fundamental tackling, which we're terrible at. But I can see why you would consider it. I doubt Florida moves on from Austin Armstrong.
I doubt also, but I mean, I'm sorry. This is unacceptable.
Yeah.
This is. So you either have to blame coaching or the players.
Right.
And I do think they need, I've been saying it for a while, and Allie, you have too. I mean, they need 30 new dudes in here quickly.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take a quick timeout, come back. I'm going to give you my opinion about that. And then we're going to talk about the game itself and why Florida might be able to win it. First, this message from Jeffrey Meldon, Meldon Law. Jeffrey Meldon. Jeffrey, you do a show where you ask a lot of questions. I've got one for you right now, okay, regarding how do you know whether your case is being handled right and what to do about it. In medicine, you can get a second opinion if you're not satisfied with the doctor's opinion that they have. And do you have that in law? Can you do that with lawyers?
Yeah, buddy. As a matter of fact, we get quite a few calls from folks that have signed up, particularly with the big box law firms that they do a hell of a good job of putting ads on TV, but after that, they don't really measure up to the way we try to create a client experience that's outstanding. And we're always willing to review a case and give a second opinion, just like with a doctor, because not all law firms are created equal.
There you have it, Meldon Law. You can go get your case reviewed right there and see if you've got the right person. My take on this is that you don't need 2 offensive line coaches, but you need 2 defensive coordinators. In my opinion, a more seasoned guy who has a little gray hair, much like Urban had when he had his defensive coordinators, 2 of them, and they worked out well. Get another guy who knows defense, bring him in here, a little older, and teach this young man, who's a very good and inspirational coach, some more basic fundamentals of defense. In my opinion, that needs to be happening. Then they need to hire a special teams coach. That's my take on it. All right, Allie, shoot me down.
I think they only need 1 offensive line coach. I think neither should be retained from the 2 we have. And it's my understanding that they are probably both gone. But I think they need an OC. I think Napier wears too many hats. I think that his system does work. I think his feel for the game in game is not great. And I think that part of that's probably because he's doing so many things. I'd hire an offensive coordinator and make Napier special teams coach that allows him, just like Urban, to kind of keep his toes wet, get the coaching feel, know what's going on in the, for his team, but have a smaller unit that he's in charge of. I would consider making a D-line coaching change. And I think that could be what you're talking about. Bring in a guy that, a seasoned vet who you can give him the title of D coordinator if you want to, if that'll help, or whatever, associate head coach, whatever fancy title you want to throw on there to help Austin Armstrong. And then I would make a change at strength and conditioning. I would honestly, that's the very first change I would make is strength and conditioning.
David, there you go. Set the table for you.
Well, 2 fired head coaches I would try to hire immediately. I would try to get, Sean Lewis was a head coach. He left the MAC head coaching job to be Dion's offensive coordinator and then got demoted. He's on the short list at Syracuse. If he doesn't get the Syracuse job, I'd bring him in as offensive coordinator. And then Zach Arnett's a hell of a defensive coach. He was a terrific defensive coordinator for Mike Leach. One and done as a head coach, but I would love a guy with SEC DC experience coming in and being an SEC DC.
Yeah, good choices.
That's part of this puzzle that we're, that's kind of being missed too, is there's 0% chance that an entire staff of football coaches from Louisiana Lafayette is good enough to coach in the SEC. They just weren't. And I feel like we brought over too many people that were friends from Louisiana Lafayette. I would figure out, even in maybe support roles and stuff, figure out how to fill in some of these pieces with seasoned SEC guys. You can't tell me the strength and conditioning coach from Louisiana Lafayette is just as good as every SEC strength coach that was there. He just was working at Louisiana Lafayette instead. We need some more conference experience. And the guys you keep that are cutting their teeth in the SEC, you're grooming them and you're working with them, and that's fine. But I think we brought over too many.
I like the head coach. Except I like Zarnett very much, and if that's what you have to do to get it shored up, I do think that Armstrong's worth keeping around.
Well, I do too, and you know what? You may lose him. You may lose him if you say, "Listen." So. Well,
we may lose anybody for that matter. Yeah.
He may not be happy if he gets, sent back down a notch. He may say, "Well, the hell with this. I'll go somewhere else." Yeah. But I'm sorry.
His resume this year isn't going to open a whole lot of.
Exactly. This defense ranks between like 105 and 130 in a lot of major categories. Come on now, we got to make some changes.
I will say they made a couple of stops for a change. That's something we haven't seen in a few weeks. So
complementary football though, and that was a problem for us too, because if the defense does actually come up with a stop, that was the one time the offense couldn't get anything going.
And that is the one area. Remember at the beginning of the year, we were pounding the table. Last year's defense could not do what? Could not get off the field. They were awful on third down. This year's defense, 38% allowing on third down. It's okay. Not awesome, not awful. Okay. in return, I believe the Gators offensively are only like 33 or 34% conversion. So that's the one area offensively where you'd like to see improvement next year, no matter who's running it, operating it, et cetera.
FSU, Florida, the Gators can wreck the Seminoles. Too bad about the quarterback. I feel bad for him. He's a quality guy, quality player. But this could really turn out to be not a great season, but could be right where they were picked to finish. Five and what were they picked to win? 5.5 games. And they would be above that if they won, and they also would be a bowl eligible, and they would wreck FSU's season. This could be a disaster for FSU. Allie, do they have a good chance or not?
I think they do have a good chance. Jordan Travis is an incredible athlete. This is a guy that was mentioned in, Heisman conversations at certain points during this season. He has the ability to put a game on his back and carry him. I think he's the reason Florida State beat Florida last year. We could have beaten Florida State last year with him. I think Tate Rodemaker is more one-dimensional than Jordan Travis is, and that should help Florida. And honestly, if I'm looking at the two quarterbacks next to each other, Max Brown and Tate Rodemaker, I think I might like Max Brown more for two reasons. One, he does have his feet. That makes him multidimensional. But two, there's even less film on him than there is on Rodemaker. Florida State has no idea what to prepare for. And we saw that was pretty successful against Missouri. And obviously Missouri had much less time than Florida State will have to prepare for him. But this does kind of level the playing field. I like Florida's offense as a whole. I think, they've done some good things this year. Florida State has obviously put up tons of points this year. I think this game is going to be close. And I know a lot of Florida State fans that are now very concerned. They seem to think their offensive line is terrible. I feel like they probably haven't watched us much this year, if that's, where their bar is. But, they're concerned. They feel like Jordan Travis with his feet opened up a lot of things for him that Tate Rodemaker will not, and that our defense will have a chance to get to him. We haven't gotten to really anybody else this whole season, so I don't know that I believe that or not, but this is put the swamp as an X factor in there, a quarterback who has played very little. I mean, Friday night against Louisville last year, he started. So that's going to be his one comparison game. And I don't know about you guys, but the swamp on a Saturday night is not Louisville on a Friday.
And David, I think the line I saw was last one 6.5. I don't know if you've seen one that's dropped more than that, but what would it have been had they not lost their quarterback? Probably 14.5, right?
Well, if both quarterbacks were healthy, the line would have been around 9.5.
Really?
So that's the benefit to Florida in the exchange of quarterbacks, is at least a field goal. You know me, I can overanalyze a 3-card funeral, but I'm into matchups. And you remember, I didn't like the Gators going to Utah because of the state of their offensive line, first game of the year on the road. I liked Florida's matchup against Tennessee because Tennessee was going to have 2 backup offensive linemen. And that's the one game this year that Florida's defensive front clearly looked like they were the better unit on the field. You guys got to help me here. The information I have is that Florida's 2 tackles are iffy at best. And Florida State can get after it. This is a defensive line like Florida State used to have when it was Florida State in the heydays. And if that's the case, I think that's a big problem for the Gators. Big. And thank goodness that Florida's quarterback can run, because he's going to have to. Secondly, though, the Noles have 2 NFL wide receivers.
Sure.
This is the best wide receiving. This is the best wide receiving core that the Gators have faced. And how have they fared?
Come on, LSU has better wide receiver. LSU has 2.
All right, that's true. That's true. I'll close second. I'll say that. I'll go LSU 1. Florida State 2. How did that defense do again? So now, granted, the quarterback at LSU is amazing. So there's 2 matchups here that I'm really worried about if I'm Florida. Now, give me the matchup where you think if I'm Florida State, I'm really worried. I don't know if there is one.
Yeah.
I think there are matchups that Florida can win, But to me, there are two matchups right now on the field in which if I'm Florida, I'm like, we are going to get our butt kicked here. And so to me, Florida somehow, somewhere has to create a pressure point where they could do it in reverse to Florida State. I just don't like if what I'm hearing about Florida's tackles is true. Whew, boy, because I do think the good thing is Florida State has started slow all year. So there's the chance, Allie, what's the, common denominator in an upset? Home team who's an underdog gets off to a good start, plays with the lead, bring the swamp into the equation. Now you don't have Jordan Travis coming out of the locker room trailing at the half. You'd have a kid who's never done it before. That I will say that really favors Florida. Florida has started well the second half of the year. Florida State has started slowly all year. Florida really needs that scenario to play out again.
Score, David?
I just think ultimately Florida State's going to win and cover. I think they're at least 7 points better, even with the backup quarterback. Even if the kid just throws it up for the wide receivers late, I'll go 30-20 Noles.
Allie?
38-31 Florida.
Okay. Based on?
I think the home field advantage comes to play. And I think this team is this close. I think that I don't think they know how to win yet. And when you figure it out, it's contagious. And I feel like they were just right on the precipice last week. So you know what? This is me being hopeful and thankful on Thanksgiving Eve here.
Yeah, I would like to say that, as I tweeted, my last tweet, the football gods hate us. You can't play any harder than that, and have things not go your way. Sure, they busted some coverage. The 3rd and 17 was awful, but their tackles were hurt that whole second half too, and they still got some balls off. So I give a little hope with that. I know they weren't probably as good as Florida State's. I do think the swamp being lit will be a big factor. Yeah. I'm telling you, you just don't know if you haven't been there on a Saturday night. And these are cries of desperation. These Gator fans are desperate. And I think maybe some of that desperation will rub off. I think it's Florida's turn for a break at some point in time. And for this reason, it's a perfect spot to knock off FSU to run your season. I'm going Florida 34, Florida State 31.
Well, if you two are right on the number of points that Florida is going to score, I'll agree with you. 34-38 are your two picks for Florida. And I do think they're going to have to get there. I think even with the backup quarterback, Florida State's going to get 28 or 30, 31 on the board. I do think the Gators have to get where you two think they're going to get.
Well, the interesting thing, so Florida scored 30 points or more in the last 5 of 6 games. Obviously, the Georgia not being the one where they scored 30. Florida State hasn't given up 30 except for, I think, once or twice this season. So something's going to have to give there. But statistically, Florida is also, I think, the best or second best offense, I guess second best to LSU, that Florida State has faced, which is also kind of interesting because we all, hum and haw about our offense and the play calling and whatever else. But it's actually statistically better than pretty much anybody Florida State's played.
Great stuff. Have a great Thanksgiving. I'm going to have myself a bunch of pie and turkey. I'm going to roll over on the floor and watch football, and I'm going to enjoy that Thanksgiving. I hope you two enjoy yours as well.
Allie, can you post a picture of all the peak men in a coma at about 5:15, 5:30 and just post it and go, does your house look like this?
Right. Yes, I will take a picture. I will post it. It's always so comical. And Eric doesn't do that because Eric's running around cleaning up and helping and whatever. He's like, the men in your family are on the couch again.
Oh, no. We're going to take his man card away for doing that. That's not going to work.
Well, I need him to help me, so please don't.
Yeah, really.
That's good. Well, that's great. Listen, guys, have a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks so much for everything, and talk to you next week, all right?
All right.
Sounds good.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Sweet and Sour, Allie and David. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I want to tell you folks about our fine sponsors. Jeffrey Meldon wishes you a very happy Thanksgiving. He has a bunch of stories to tell, which we're going to be talking about the next couple of days. Quite an experience he had. He went on a trip with the Gators to LSU, and let him tell the story. Wound up having to sit in the last seat in the bus was next to Billy Napier at 3:00 in the morning, and they had quite an adventure. I'll have him tell you that next week. But first, I want to tell you about our friends at the great company which has been sponsoring us for a long time. All really good people. Wishing them over at Renstar a very happy Thanksgiving, and they wish the same to you and your families. They're a company that are stakeholders in downtown Ocala. They've been there a long time. They do wonderful things in medicine and wonderful things in the community. They conduct clinical trials to help us get better in our health. They also partner with prominent pharmaceutical companies and biomedical companies to get information to and from them. They have a very high quality, patient-centered clinical research facility right there in Ocala with cutting-edge clinical research trials in Ocala on areas like Alzheimer's, dementia, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraines, fibromyalgia, many things like that that affect us in our community. So they've been doing this a long time. It's since 1998. They've had 700 of these clinical trials. Check them out today. Go to renstar.net. Find out how you can get involved. You may be able to get involved in some of these studies. Clinical research facility. You can be, in some cases, the compensation can be made for time and travel. So that's Renstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today, and wishing you and yours a very happy Thanksgiving. I'm Buddy Martin, back on Friday with Urban Meyer. I hope you enjoyed this broadcast, and we'll talk to you after we probably gain 10, 15 pounds. See you on Friday, all right?